Hello and welcome to the Patient Educators Update, where we talk about patient education in a clinical environment. I'm Chuck Jones with Synergy Broadcast, and I'd like to welcome our guest, Fran London. Hi, Fran.
Hi, Chuck.
Fran is the Patient Education Specialist at Phoenix Children's Hospital in Phoenix, Arizona, and she's also the author of the book No Time to Teach, which was the 2010 Book of the Year by the American Association of Nurses.
AJ, American Nurses Association.
American Nurses Association. See now you went on vacation and then you took some time to go to the HCEA conference, and so we haven't even talked in 3 weeks, and I've forgotten all this stuff. So it's we'll just assume it's a function of me getting older. Well, welcome back. I missed talking to you. I'm glad you're back. What I want to do for this episode is have you talk about your HCEA experience, because not only were you an attendee, but you were also a keynote speaker, and you also gave a workshop. So why don't you tell us a little bit about the conference and the association, if you want to, and then go into a little bit about your experience up there.
Sure. It was in Ohio this year, in Cincinnati. I have been a member of the Healthcare Education Association since it began, and have been on the board. And it's really the only association that specializes in patient education, that really gives patient education a voice.
Yeah.
So it's really cool to go to their conferences, because it keeps me in touch with what's really going on around the world. Actually, they have people from Canada coming also, and in the past they've had other countries.
Okay.
So it was fun. It was great to see these people, a lot of new people, a lot of people I've known for years. And we talked about basically all the topics that come up in our video programs here. Everything that's been in the literature.
Yeah. So what's keeping people up at night right now?
They don't know where healthcare is going,
Yeah.
but they know patient education is going to be very important. So they're revving up, knowing that whatever is going to happen, there's going to be a lot more emphasis on making sure people understand how to take care of themselves and staying out of the hospital, and reducing costs and reducing readmission. So that's a lot of the energy.
Yeah.
There was a lot of reference to communicating with patients, both on the health literacy level and also on the cultural language difference level. How do we reach people that we've had trouble reaching before, because now we realize that's where we can have the most impact.
Yeah. Did anybody have any thoughts on that? Were there any good ideas that came out of the conference, or was it just still a large mountain to climb?
It was a lot of sharing of resources, which was very helpful. A lot of references to resources, to websites, to things that we can use in our practice. So it's a lot of sharing. And there were handouts for almost all the presentations. So we got a lot of things in writing that we can then apply when we go back to our jobs.
Excellent. Okay. I'll make sure that we put a link to the HCEA website in the show notes, in case somebody who's interested in becoming a member and finding out more about the organization. Now tell us a little bit about the keynote that you gave.
Well, they wanted to know more about technology, because it's something I am very interested in. So the title was, is that in the budget? Patient education and technology, which it's the first question you ask, because you think of technology as being expensive. So I basically looked at what was out there and where it fit, and I came up with kind of a new way of looking at it, that basically when you're in the hospital, the technology that's most important is videos and handouts, because that's used to support the conversation you have with the patient. So much of the education that's done in the hospital is with the conversation. You're talking about what it is they need. You're finding out how to best present it to them, and then you're helping them understand it before they go home.
Yeah.
So that's the inpatient side. So you really don't need a lot of technology there. But the technology that's booming, the apps and the websites and the resources that people refer to for continuing education and for social support and support to maintain new behaviors, are really the continuing care portion of technology and patient education. So it's we don't have to worry about it a lot in the hospital. We just have to have the basics available, but we can refer people because they have their own equipment. They have their own smartphones and computers, and they can go to websites from even a library. So we can refer them to those things for after they leave the hospital. So budget isn't as big an issue as we thought it was.
Yeah, it really doesn't have to be because, as an example, hospitals already have a cable TV system, and video can be shown over that, and there's several different ways that can be done, and it doesn't have to cost $1 million to do it effectively. As a matter of fact, the simpler the better, because the last thing the nurses need is something else to complicate their life. So the simpler it can be, the better. And then in terms of handouts, there are all kinds of sources. There are producers that produce things, and then the technology is available today where you can obviously create your own handouts, which is something that you do for your hospital.
Yes.
And there's much more artistic talent available in terms of layout and printing and things of that nature. And there's printing on demand, so you don't have to print 1 million copies now. So there's no doubt that we often tell hospitals that you can invest in a video on demand system, and it's cheaper than a new full-time employee. So if you're faced with having to reduce staff, you can add a system similar to ours for less than it would cost to add a full-time person, and that piece of equipment can then be used by everybody that's in the education department, in nursing, physical therapy, dietetics, you name it, they can all use it. So the actual cost per patient really gets down into pennies, almost like handouts. So you're right, the budget is there, but the thinking is not. They all think, oh, it's too expensive, we can't possibly handle that stuff. But
they
it's
think
there.
about, needing an iPad for every patient or something like that.
Yeah.
You don't have time to deal with that stuff when they're in the hospital.
No, you really don't. And the last thing you need is something else to add to infection control worries.
Yeah.
In your discussions with some of the folks in your networking sessions, were they concerned about using technology, or do they understand how it fits in within the hospital, or was there still some confusion about that?
I got the sense that there's a whole range of abilities and capacities and knowledge. So I tried to talk to everybody at their own level, which was, for the people who it's all kind of scary and new. I even gave a little impromptu class on how to use Twitter because they were enthralled with that, and they know that the patients are using it. So one of the things I talked about was work from what you're capable of and what you know and what you're comfortable with, and meet the patients at where they are.
Yeah.
And certainly in pediatrics, our families are young and they're very techno savvy. So we really do have to reach them where they are, which is on the internet.
Yeah,
and social media.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And they're all over Facebook. They're all over Twitter, and there are other ones that are out there. As an example, Instagram. I don't know if you've ever paid much attention to that, but it started out primarily as a photo sharing, but you can now do a 15-second video. You'd be amazed if you think about it, the type of patient education you could do in 15 seconds, and that's the kind of stuff that. Those that are tech savvy out there that are on the social media networks, that's the kind of stuff that they would follow and pay attention to.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The other thing I had to emphasize was that if your patients are elderly or just not tech savvy or don't have the economic ability to get involved in technology, you don't have to worry about it. You don't have to provide them with technology. You don't have to teach them how to use it. You
Yeah.
just teach them the way you always did teach them.
Yeah, that's correct. And you know, in the case like when I was taking care of my mother, I wanted things electronic and I wanted all the stuff because then I could handle that with her and do everything I needed to do to take care of her. But having it all in one place on my phone or my tablet just made it so much easier for me. So it works both ways on that. Were there any surprises in terms of either problems or topics that you noticed that people were talking about?
One of the things that came up more than I anticipated was the use of pictures with patients who don't speak English.
Okay.
A lot of picture instructions and a lot of pictures that people could point to that communicate with the staff. So that was growing because I think the problem of multi-languages in our patient populations has been quite a challenge for folks.
Yeah. Now, I would imagine this not only included the patient education, but also potentially diagnostic as well as just normal communication on day-to-day conversation.
Yeah, give me some water kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was very interesting, and different places approached it a little differently, but they all had the same idea. We've got to communicate with our patients and can't ignore that they don't speak the same language.
Yeah. You know, I don't know that we've actually talked about this before, but I know that Google, for one, has a Translate product, and there may be some other translation things out there. And I don't know what their ability to translate medical terminology would be, but I think in some of the, at least on the TV commercials, because I have not looked at this at all, it's probably something worth taking a look at. You see the commercial where the person speaks a foreign language into the phone and then the phone translates it into English. I don't know if that really works. It might be helpful if it did.
It's actually still pretty primitive.
That doesn't surprise me.
It has quite a few problems.
Yeah.
So the presentations on translation talked about what the pitfalls were and how people tend to go towards those things because they're easy and free, but they're not very effective at all. And there are a couple of examples. For example, I remember one slide in someone's presentation that the word in Spanish for bone is Hueso, hueso, and yeso is the word for cast, Yeso. So they look a lot alike, they sound a lot alike, but if you're saying I'm going to take off your child's cast and you use the word bone instead,
Yeah.
it could get very confusing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I have not looked at that stuff at all, so I can see that would be a problem. Now, you guys have the Journey Board app that you've expanded, and I know you talked about that while you were up there. Did you also mention the other one? Was it Simply Saying?
Oh yes, there was a lot of enthusiasm for that because we all need. I mean, it was specific for patient talking to patients from a resident's point of view, explaining the medical terms. But anybody who talks to patients, whether they're pediatric or not, can use some clear ways to describe what we do medically because people just don't understand.
Sure, yeah.
So yeah, that was very popular. People were downloading it right there in the middle of the conference.
Oh, excellent. Okay, well, good. Okay, well, cool. It sounds like a pretty good conference. Sounds like you had a good time and you got a chance to network with a lot of good folks to share some similar problems and talk about solutions and resources and things of that nature.
Yeah, it was a great networking opportunity. They give a lot of breaks and a lot of time to break out into groups to talk to people with similar issues. So it was good for that.
Okay, excellent. Okay, all right. Well, we've hit the end of our time for today. That was a a pretty good recap and some interesting information. It sounds like the topics that we talk about from episode to episode are still pretty much on target, and so we'll continue on talking about those as well as some new ones. I've got a list of things I'll run by you for some future episodes. So why don't you tell folks where they can find you online?
Well, I've got a blog at www.notimetoteach.com, and I'm on Twitter at NoTimeToTeach.
Okay, cool. And we have a Patient Educators Update page on Google+. You can find us there. All the videos are posted there. We haven't had any comments yet, but hopefully we'll start to get some here soon. For those of you that might be interested in using and incorporating video into your patient education, we have a video on demand product called MMDS, or Medical Media Delivery System, and it's quite easy to use, and it comes preloaded with all kinds of goodies. And if you'd be interested in that, you can visit our website at synergybroadcast.com, or you can Google MMDS or Medical Media Delivery System. So, Fran, thanks so much for your time today. Oh, you know what? I forgot to talk about your book. You know, Fran's book, No Time to Teach, we use that for a lot of our topics from some of our episodes, and that book is available wherever books are sold, and at Amazon you can get it both in paper and ebook form. And for those of you that want to use a really good resource for in-services, you can buy Fran's book in bulk from her publisher, Pritchett and Hull, and their website is p-h.com, and they'll give you a sizable discount for a bulk purchase there. So I want to make sure you know about that, because her book is a great resource. So Fran, thanks so much for your time and visit this week. Glad you're back, and I look forward to talking to you for the next episode.
Indeed. Bye,
Okay.
Jeff.
Bye-bye.